Hey, yo, is this thing on? All right, so today we're talking about the past and the future. The future, regenerative agriculture, or the present, I should say. The present, in all senses of the word is regenerative agriculture. This is the new stuff. This involves rotational grazing and cows living their best lives out on pasture and moving around making healthy meat for healthy humans. However, we got a lot of sick humans because we've been feeding them bad meat from sick cows because we've been feeding cows the wrong thing. Now, the backstory. Cows are ruminants. They got stomachs, 4 chambers, a bunch of bacteria inside of there. They're supposed to eat the grass and let the bacteria that's supposed to break down the grass gonna ruminate inside of there, and it gives the cows what they need. They're herbivores. They chew, chew, chew. They're supposed to have vegetables, and they eat the grass, and then they live happy lives. They're supposed to walk around outside and enjoy the sunshine and eat the grass and poop and pee on the grass. And that fertilizes the grass and allows for them to get their healthy meal, and they move on. Why? Because they're a little afraid of the predators. Now, the carnivores that are around all of the herbivores, like we see in Lion King and everywhere else, buffalo, wildebeest, deer, and cows, which are descended from aurochs, these herbivores are prey species. They got eyes on the side of their head, and they got molars for chewing herbs because they're vegetarian, right? And they're supposed to be watching out for the predators, and they've evolved eyes on the side of their head, and they've also evolved to move as a mob and mow the grass, okay? The grasslands across, the Middle East and Asia and Australia, South America, North America, right? So we can think about North America in particular. Giant grasslands in the middle of our continent, okay? And we've had a lot of herbivores in the past that move as a mob because there's safety in numbers. And when the carnivores come around, they're going to make the mob of herbivores want to move in a group and stay safe together, right? Because the carnivore is going to pick off the ones that are, not with the group. And so they're always kind of on the move. They're never staying in one place for a very long amount of time. They're just constantly moving. Not really a migration, but just like we got to kind of always be on the move, because the wolves, the big cats, big felines, big canines, saber-toothed tigers, cheetahs, there was a lot that went extinct 10,000 years ago or something at the Holocene. And so with the absence of predators, now that we have domesticated a lot of these cows, we have to recognize that their natural mechanism is to move as a mob, and they never stay in one place for too long. So if you have cows in one spot for too long, they just eat up all the grass, they poop and pee, and then the grass doesn't ever get to regrow. So what we want is to move them around in a method called rotational grazing, which is a component of regenerative agriculture, to regenerate the soil, grow more plants, and have healthy, real food that is feeding healthy, real human beings who eat plants and animals as omnivores, okay? Now, the way that you're going to grow those plants is only if you have healthy soil, which retains plenty of water. And if you are fertilizing the ground with cow poop, pee, chicken, bird poop, and pee, along with pigs and other things on farms, this means you don't have to ship in any fertilizer. You don't have to water as much because the soil is like a sponge and it'll soak up the water and it'll hold on to the water when it rains. So you don't need as much water. Don't need to ship in any fertilizers, spend any fossil fuels making the fertilizers or shipping the fertilizers. We just need the natural fertilizers, which is the cows, our ruminants, to be there and rotating from spot to spot. So they spend about a day here, and then we need a farmer to come along and say, hey, it's time for you to move to the next spot, right? And then a day later, move to the next spot, move to the next spot, move to the next spot. And you don't come back to the same spot for maybe a month. Kind of depends on the area of the country. But until the grass is really grown really nicely. And meanwhile, while it's growing, it's going through photosynthesis to convert CO2 into oxygen, which is really good for us humans and good for the plants because the plants then get to grow. So they create this really nice soil and they are using that carbon, pulling it out of the air. That's called carbon sequestration. Plants are amazing at this. They've been doing it for 2 billion years. They've evolved to do this. They've evolved to work with the cows that are supposed to be moving and mobbing and mowing the grass, not destroying the grass, not trampling it forever and ever, but move, mob, and mow because of the carnivore threat. And as they move and the grass regrows, we have carbon sequestration, which takes the carbon out of the air and puts it into the plants. When plants do photosynthesis, they are taking that carbon and they are building themselves because they are carbon-based life forms like us. So they need carbon. They're the first step of pulling carbon out of the air, using the sunlight energy to do that and make themselves. They're made out of, sugar. Okay. That's a story for another time. Okay. Now, the problem is that for the longest time, we've been trying to just make as many cows as possible. We're going for more quantity of cows. And so we're like, if we feed them corn, then they get fatter faster and we can sell them for more money earlier on and get more money. So the farmer in the past was just trying to make enough money to stay alive, to stay afloat. So he gets more and more cows and he puts them in a building, right? Builds a building so they don't get rained on, and we can keep them all together and we can feed them all at the same time. We only have to put the corn out. So we got to call someone else. There's another farmer that's growing the corn somewhere in another state. And then we got to grow the corn with pesticides and fertilizers, GMO corn. And then we got to use fossil fuels to harvest that corn in a tractor, and then fossil fuels to shuck the corn and get it all separated into little, and then grind it up and then put it on a truck. All this takes fossil fuels and puts more carbon dioxide in the air through combustion. Every time we're combusting and lighting a fire and burning those fossil fuels, we put carbon dioxide into the air, out into the air, which is causing our greenhouse gas effect, global warming, and climate change. And so then we ship all this corn in a truck, which uses fossil fuels, over to the big old factory, this big old building where we have as many cows cramped in to one spot as possible. This old method is called a cafo, a confined or combined and concentrated animal feeding operation. So we put them all together because we thought it'd be easier. Let's just feed them all. Let's feed them all corn, make them get fatter faster, and they're all in one spot so we know where they are. Problem is that they're living indoors. Cows have not evolved to live indoors like humans. We need to get outside. Cows need to get outside. And they're walking around on concrete, okay? Cows are not, they're supposed to walk around on grass. And then the poop and pee, it doesn't get combined into the soil to make wonderful fertilizer and cause growth and photosynthesis of the grasses. It's just stuff that they're going to be walking in. And then, something comes in and cleans that out every once in a while. But all that poop leads to disease. And then we need antibiotics. And all this sick cows with poop and disease and antibiotics eating the wrong food that they've not evolved to eat leads to bad meat and sick humans. Now, this corn, when it goes inside the cows, it causes them to be sick. When they're sick, more burps and farts, which is methane. Methane is CH4, more carbon going up into the atmosphere, and that's even worse of a greenhouse gas than CO2. But both of these greenhouse gases are being released in order to grow this sick meat that makes sick humans, okay? But it's making a lot of it. So again, we've got quantity, but not really any quality, and certainly it's contributing to this extremely negative impact, which we are now fully trying to understand. So these burps and farts, this methane that comes from sick cows, their digestive system, the bacteria in there, they're just not getting the right nutrients that the bacteria needs. But when you do have cows that aren't eating the right thing, they produce less methane because they have healthy bacteria and they're not having as many burps and farts with methane. And the grasses that are growing are sequestering so much carbon that it is actually a net negative carbon process to have rotationally grazed, regenerative agriculture, fully grass-fed cows. If they're done regeneratively and rotationally, we can actually pull in more carbon to the ground, pull more carbon out of the air than we put out with this process in eating this meat. Whereas this meat is just like, it's just more greenhouse gases into the sky, okay? Now, why is that an issue? Well, quick lesson on greenhouse gases. The sun shines on the earth, right? Now, if it's shining on a plant, the plant can go through photosynthesis in order to grow more plants, right? But if it's shining on concrete or metal or anything that's painted, whatever, it reflects off, right? It also reflects off the water, and there is a little bit of reflection off of plants because they don't absorb all of the wavelengths of light. They just absorb everything but green. So this reflection of light sometimes can just go off into space, and we don't trap the heat, and we don't necessarily trap all of the light. But with extra greenhouse gases around the Earth, in the Earth's atmosphere, like CO2 and methane, these extra greenhouse gases, they are trapping the heat from the sun. So it goes in, it bounces off of something that's not absorbing it for photosynthesis, and it ricochets back and forth. The heat from the sun ricochets back and forth off of the greenhouse gases. So the more of those we have, the more of that heat that we're trapping. Now, that would be a good thing if we all lived in tropical areas and we liked humidity and heat. But we're not all living in the Amazon, and it's not all a tropical rainforest across the world, okay? We need different environments, different climates. We need shifting. There's this very delicate balance in all of the ecosystems. They all need something slightly different, okay? When we just warm up the entire globe really, really, really fast in an artificial way because we have manufactured so many different things and are trying to get quantity instead of quality, ultimately, this is what leads to our climate changing in many different ways. More natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, tsunamis, sea level rise. And then that carbon dioxide also dissolves into the oceans and makes it more acidic. And the melting of glaciers and the fracturing of glaciers and destroying habitats for Arctic organisms, right? Bad stuff, okay? But the good news is this is the old way. And we know now that this is not the best way to do it. And this isn't the way that nature has done it. For millions of years, we've had herbivores moving, mobbing, and mowing, making healthy grass and sequestering carbon. And once we understand that this is the way that it's supposed to happen, we can mimic what nature has already done and use the most powerful carbon sequestration technology ever invented that's been used for the last 2 billion years by plants. And that's called photosynthesis.